So we'll get started with introductions. Hopefully some more people show up. So I'm Nilesh Thakkar. I'm the US head for Zinnov, handle business development and delivery. And we're going to have a panel on workforce planning for the future. So before I give a context, I want to introduce the three panelists we have. Amit Gajwani is at Sybase, sorry. He's the SVP and Business Development Head at Sybase. And the reason, he'll tell us why a sales head is part of the HR panel. So he's got an interesting story. It's very, very, so when I heard that, I said, wow, this is perfect. Tellen Monroe, she and I worked at Intuit together for a long time, and she's awesome. Really loved working with her then, and she's now the SVP and head of HR, people and culture at Axiom. Axiom is a 40-year-old company, about 4,500 employees.
A little less than that, a little under 4,000.
So pretty big company, but it's changing, and like they are going through the same disruptions and digital transformations we all of us are going through. And she's got some interesting ideas she's going to share with us. And Vijay Swaminathan, he's actually one of the co-founders of Zinnov. But even more interesting part of what he's done is he's actually built a platform which some of you may be using called Talent Neuron. So there's a customer there, which basically, and he'll talk about more hopefully in his introduction of how that platform can be used for your workforce planning. So we'll talk about that. So the reason we thought about this panel was, as you heard in the morning, there's disruptions going on in technology, in product, in how we do things. People are not buying cars and using Uber, but people are the ones building it, but people can't change that fast, or maybe they can, and maybe we'll hear about how we can make that happen. There are new technologies being, people were using R for data, big data, and now they're using Python, and next year they'll be using something else. And so how do you plan for your workforce if the technology change and what your organization requires is rapidly changing? Not only that, it's becoming global. You have centers all over the world. How do you do that? Our country is becoming extremely diverse, so the kind of people who work together is very different than it used to be, even a couple of decades ago, right? So how do you build a culture which is sensitive to all those different diversities which we have? So there's a lot of disruption in the people side of things which we normally don't talk about. We talk about technology disruptions, but we don't as much talk about the people disruption, the change. In fact, in the President Obama's address, the State of the Union address this year, he talked about that the economy seems to be doing okay, but people are not feeling it. And one of the reasons he gave was the scale of change is so fast that people are unable to handle that. And actually, when he said that, it made sense that maybe that's true, that the economy, we say it's only 5% unemployment, but the amount of anger which we are seeing in the political climate right now doesn't reflect that strong economy. So what's going on? And I do believe that there's some truth to the scale of change. People are unable to handle that level of change. So we're going to ask the panelists what are they doing to help solve that, and we'll keep it very interactive. So if you have a question, please raise your hand, and we'll accommodate that question right away. So to start with, Amit, Amit, do you want to give an introduction of yourself and company, and what do you do for the company?
Certainly. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amit Gajwani, and I head, as Nilesh mentioned, I head sales for a services company. We are a 5,800 people company, predominantly based in India, but almost all our customers are in North America. And we service tech companies. So most of the product development companies, a lot of product development companies are companies where technologies enable their business. So right from e-commerce to your big data, big business intelligence, any and everything to do with media, advertising, even in the travel and hospitality space, and more in the pure play technology, whether it's platform development, API development. So a lot of large names, including Microsoft, Symantec, Google, Expedia, these are our customers. So we provide technology enablement for them. We don't have any product of our own. So the reason why a salesperson would be on a panel of which is going to predominantly talk about talent management is, if you don't have any product of your own, if you don't own any IP, then what is it that you're providing to your customers? It's predominantly human resource and the capability of this human resource. So unless your organization has a very scientific, that's what we call a very scientific, very data-driven way of measuring the capability of every single individual that is working in your company, and this is not just technical capability, this is every single human capability as well of the individual, so that you can then harness the power of the capability and maximize that particular individual's performance on any kind of a project. So imagine, I'm sure all of you all have read this book called Moneyball or watched the movie called Moneyball. So imagine the concept exactly similar, just that we thought of the concept even before Moneyball. So this has been there for the last 10 years with us. It's basically maximizing the potential of every individual, because you have captured so much data about that individual, which is got to do with personal skills, soft skills, technical skills, such that you are able to put him in a place where he performs to the best of his potential, such that, and then imagine a team or an ecosystem of all these people, so that the output is very tangible and predictable in nature. So for an organization like us, if we are able to do that, we are able to create an environment for a client where delivery is going to happen successfully in a more tangible manner, and not something that you can leave in terms of to luck or to heroism for that matter. So you are using data, you are using the power of data. So it's a very scientific process, and that's why the topic interested me a lot, and hopefully in the next half an hour we're going to speak more about it. Thank you.
Clara?
Hi, everyone. How many people have heard of Axiom? Okay, a couple folks. Axiom is about 3,500 employees worldwide. We're about 850 million, 40-year-old company, as Nilesh was saying, but in the midst of a transformation. And what I'm excited about is what we're trying to do right now is take our business strategy and this transformation that we're going through right now and actually translate that into a people and a culture strategy. So a couple things about Axiom real quick. As a big data company, folks are saying, okay, what exactly does Axiom do? We have a lot of Fortune 500 companies that are our clients. We have a lot that are our partners as well. And what we try and do for companies is help make marketing relevant. For consumers, we're trying to help with that too. And for consumers, we take it to the next level to say, we want to keep that information that you provide to make that marketing relevant, safe and secure and private. We anonymize information so that we can in fact do that the best way possible and help companies like American Express or Tory Burch or Citibank do that every day. So one of the interesting things as we think about workforce of the future and looking at Axiom as an example, because Axiom's a 40-year-old data company, what we're trying to do is evolve and change. We're doing that through acquisitions. We're doing that by not only bringing in new talent, but also helping our existing talent develop new skills to be part of this future that we're designing right now, which is real exciting. And so we'll talk a little bit about that in a bit, but that's the exciting part for all of us, is we're at this inflection point, and how do we bring this all together in a way that brings the rich history of the past and the newness of the future, and what acquisitions are also helping us learn real time.
Yes, thank you.
Privileged to be here. One of the things that I want to bring to the table through this panel is really around, we have done like close to 50 engagements on strategic workforce planning in the last 3 years. My goal is to share some of the best practices around that. I'm super thrilled about how we followed up this event more after talking about disruption, because strategic workforce planning is a very common practice that has sort of remained in the organization more passively for the last 10 plus years. Everybody is doing framework, strategic work. The first step is always identify critical job family, and they go and talk to everybody, and they come. Everybody is a critical resource, and then right from accounting to complex software developer, everybody is in that critical job family list. So we actually help companies how to identify critical job families using external data. Don't just rely on internal surveys, because there's going to be heavy bias in how do you assess criticality of a job family. So I'm quite excited to share like what we have learned in the last 3 to 4 years, specifically on strategic workforce planning.
Okay. So, so I want to bring it back to that, what you just said, and then then we'll come back to talent. So, how are people planning? Like every year, there's a new skill set required, but you can't really lay off people every year.
Right.
So what are people doing to make that happen? How are they addressing that?
It's an excellent question. I'll kind of start with a case study. I think people can relate to that a lot more quickly. A large financial services company, globally about 10,000 people, they got carried away recently, and like they want to hire 100 big data scientists. This was sort of the theme that they set, and they said one of the critical job family that we believe we do not have is big data scientists. So we need to come up with a plan. We need to have recruiters out there. We need to hit all the universities. So when and as part of that, actually, we need to get rid of some 500 people. And the first thing that we did was, can you give the portfolio of people whom you are going to get rid of? Let's look at all this list. And when we look at that list, I was fascinated to see a lot of actuaries and math people with a lot of math talent. So we went back to the board and said, you're going to have a lot of difficulty. It's at least going to take 2 years to hire 100 team big data scientist operation. But by the way, do you realize you are planning to get rid of a lot of actuaries who have phenomenal mathematical background, and these people will get job as big data scientists the minute you send them out. So once they realize that, can you unpack that a little bit? We did a skill analysis to say, what are the core skills actuaries bring in? Algorithm development, computational mathematics, analyzing customer data and deriving experience or deriving inference. These are all algorithmic aspects of machine learning. They may not have the exact skill on R or any specific packages that is used for machine learning, but it's a fabulous foundation. Then if you go and hire or even outsource some of the development aspect, they can build very good algorithms for you. So when we mentioned that, suddenly they went back to their inventory and looked at the list and said, I think there is some 20 people who can learn new things, and they can be the part of the core big data team. And that's been one of our key message when we analyze critical skills. Do not think that the new skills is always equal to new people. It is, if you view the world like that, it's going to be a very challenging scenario to go, and it puts a lot of pressure on talent acquisition. It puts pressure on HR in general. It put HR on the CHROs. Let's look at what are the skill makeup that is truly required, and let's truly hire that gap. And the knowledge that you would gain from that would be tremendous. And that's one thing we are advocating. Of course, there are a lot of best practices, but skill evolution is a component that we are trying to say, let's not look at new skill, new people. So,
that's great. Tell in a 40-year company, this is probably very much something which you have to address. How have you addressed this? What are you doing about it?
Absolutely. We've got some next-gen strategies which require next-gen skills and capabilities, but I think what's important is to realize that, I would say, a significant portion of any employee population has a learning mindset. We all want to learn, we all want to grow, we all want to get better. And so assuming that from the get-go is a really great place to start. One of the things that we did, I just hired a new leader of talent acquisition, but I actually combined two organizations, combined talent acquisition and talent development together. Very strategically, because in order to develop a people strategy to support our new business strategy, what's important is we need to understand the wonderful talents and skills of our existing workforce, and also understand where there are gaps, figure out how to develop where there are gaps, and then also where we need to move a little faster, figure out how we can acquire talent or partner in new ways to get those skills in-house and train folks. So that's one of the things that we're doing right now. So it's not always just about acquiring new talent. Plus the other thing too, if you only have an acquisition-only strategy, it sends a big message to the broader organization. And it's a negative message where people are saying, wait a minute, aren't you going to invest in me and help me grow and learn? And I want to send a message which says we absolutely want to help folks grow and learn. And that's why that learning mindset is so critical as a starting point and something we need to assess for whenever we bring anybody into the organization.
That's pretty interesting because if you think of it, a talent acquisition person's job is to get talent from outside. Suddenly now they're responsible for not looking outside but looking inside. So it must have been a challenging or something which I'm assuming that we'll see how it goes, but it's a very interesting way of looking at it. But I think it's the right call for the company if you think of it and the people who are working at the company. So really, thank you for sharing that. So Amit, you told about your data platform. You told us about that. People tend to, in sports and all that, in baseball, every player is measured by their batting average and all that. In companies, people don't like to be measured with numbers, right? How are people reacting to this? What are you? Yeah. Because there's a lot of pressure which it could create. How are you handling that?
Absolutely, because what I'm actually talking about is a person becoming a data point in the system. You're looking at it very objectively as a set of parameters when you look at it at an individual. For instance, when you talk about talent evolution, you're basically trying to identify the people who can be groomed in terms of acquiring the next-gen skills rather than looking outside all the time, because you can't look all the time. There's always a fight going on for the talent that you want, especially in the newer skills. Now, how do you decide who are the people who can be groomed on that or who can be trained for a particular skill? What kind of qualities these particular individuals need to have? So you have 100, 150 people who are capable enough of being trained. Now, unless you know these people really well, their aptitude for getting trained, their ability to adapt to new skills, their flexibility, these are the soft skills. What kind of work they have done in their past lives. So for instance, if they have worked in 4 different organizations and in your organization they have worked on multiple projects, how would you know that he has the requisite skills or the background of his past experience that he can be groomed for the future? You need to capture that in the system. So our organization through this system captures every single thing that individual has done on his different projects and also captures relatively his soft skills. Like as compared to other people in the organization, how good is he on leadership? How good is he on interpersonal, grasping power, IQ, every possible skill. Then at the click of a button, whatever we are speaking about, in our organization at a click of a button, I can know who are the top 50 people who can be trained in the most effective manner to be ready to be deployed on projects in the next few days. Imagine if you can do that at a click of a button. And how can you do that? You can only do that if you have captured the data over a period of time. It's very simple. If you want to just imagine it, that you have a team of 5 people who have been working with you for many years. Now you know these 5 people really well. You know them in and out. And you know when a project comes to you, who is most suitable to work in a particular role, who is the best possible person to lead that particular project, who is a better team member, who is not a very extrovert person, but he can put his head down and work. Extrapolate that to 5,800 people. Now do you know all of them equally well, the amount that you knew these 5 people? You cannot. It's humanly not possible. So as in the morning they were saying, the human ego prevents us from looking at data. The only way you can make an objective decision is when you look at data which you have captured over a period of time. And why an individual, the question that you asked, that people find it very difficult to accept that they are being compared or marked, eventually it benefits them. Because using this system, you are able to deploy a person in a role where his potential can be maximum, can be, if for no other word, harnessed maximum. If a person is able to give his best or work to his maximum potential, obviously he's more a satisfied employee. And if he works to his maximum potential, he gets the best appraisal, gets the best promotion as well. So you're creating an environment for him to give his best performance, and who wouldn't want that?
Okay. That's great. So, I'm telling you, you're the only HR leader on this panel. So I want to come back to you. Do you think that people would be comfortable with this? Because, I've had a lot of teams, and always I've been told, one of the evaluations, it's the soft skills, so how people work with each other. It's just not numbers, right? How do you measure somebody? It's just not the what, but the how part is pretty important, right? So do you think, what do you think about this numbers-driven HR? What is your sense?
So let me turn it back on this audience. How do you all feel? So do you agree with the numbers driven, and do you think that that would work for you personally? Just a show of hands. Okay. Yeah, kind of on the fence. Please.
Can we get a, yeah.
Please.
Can we get a mic here?
Sorry, I'll just speak loudly. The challenge, I think, is you're talking about data in and data out. What are the standards that you will add to make sure that the data coming in is done on the level footing as opposed to somebody's interpretation of a person's skill?
Wonderful point. In fact, can I answer?
Yeah, can you repeat the question? Because I don't
Yeah, the question is that how do you ensure that everyone is at the same plane, because a manager's interpretation of a person varies across, different people would interpret a particular skill differently. Is that the question, right? That's a wonderful question. So obviously in our organization, we have more than 250 managers who are looking at these people. Firstly, all the skills need to be common across individuals. So we have to remember this is not absolute comparison, this is relative comparison. There's no absolute number we are benchmarking people against, which means let's take a very simple skill. Technical skills of an individual. What we do, so he's working in any technology, whether it's big data, whether it is cloud, whether it is Hadoop, any kind of technology. Relatively, you know in your mind, if you have 10 people in your project, who's the best, who's the next best, who's the third best, who's the fourth best. All you are doing is you're relatively ranking them against each other. The question is, there's another team exactly similar and a manager is doing it. You have to create a standard process which takes years of effort, where every manager is using the same principle to relatively compare people. Also, let me tell you, we actually do a trend analysis of the managers to see who is measuring each one on a different level. Also, this measurement is not output-based, but capability-based. Because the moment you look at output, your decision is going to be biased, because you don't know what kind of a project an individual is working in. But if you measure capability, it doesn't matter. He moves from one project to another, his output is not going to change because you have measured his capability. A short answer to your question.
Oh, a couple others. This is great. I have the
They
group
can do the
answering.
I think that's off.
I had a question. So, I like the idea.
There's a,
Actually,
I like the idea of this, and it makes sense to me that it would work over years. But given the dynamic environment of most organizations and how quickly people move, how do you find that you get enough data from enough points to really make this a success or practical?
again, I'll have to answer.
yeah.
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll answer. I think then we can move to a different point. Actually, you have to start this when you're not too big. It's very difficult to make an elephant to dance. You cannot go ahead in a very large organization with a lot of things and then try to do it. So you have to do it when you are nimble, and any change, whether it's digital or anything else, is disruptive in nature. So initially, there's going to be a lot of backlash because people don't accept data that easily. They believe that their judgment is much better, because the judgment is normally clouded by a few things. But the moment you start looking at data, you automatically start realizing the power and the potential of it. So over a period of time, you have to be very consistent in the way you do it, and you need to have belief in what you are doing it. So it has to run top down. It cannot be a bottom-up approach. So right at the top, the CEO needs to believe in it. When the CEO believes in it, and it's a consistent way. See, one important thing to remember over here is the same practice is used across 600, 700 projects that we are executing today. You have to continuously train people on how they interpret a particular parameter of an individual so that they all think together. Like I said, we actually gauge the managers who are gauging them in how good they are at gauging. Because let's take an example, when I move from one project to another, my capability doesn't change, right? So which means I should have the same performance. But if two people are gauging me differently, which means one person is not doing the job right. So it takes number of years of effort. I mean, we have been doing it for 12 years now. So simple answer.
Eric.
Go ahead.
So
Hey guys, can we get the mic working?
number 6.
Number 6. Number 6? There, good. All right. Technology, all right, love it. Eric Lane, Juniper Networks. I totally disagree with what you just said. Because we're collecting data. There's two things about data. One is there's fact data, like I'm 6'2", and then there's sort of this empirical data or sort of subjective data that says I'm tall or short. All right, both are accurate for the situation. Tall or short could be for the role. And so I went to one company and said, hey, we don't hire idiots here. All those PC people, we'll just throw those resumes away. All right. 2 years later, they needed PC people. Okay. So it always goes back to knowing what a combination of skills and capabilities are. But they're two separate things. Capability, it does include outcome. So all those things are a data collectible. Did I do well on the last project? Do I have the skills for the next project? Is the matchup right? Because the team matchup is another thing. So these are all, when people think about data, they think about fact only. Opinion is a data point. So you talk about employee engagement. Did I feel good about my boss today when the survey was taken? Yes, that is a data. Now, is it a fact for me? So I think the combination of understanding that data collection is both fact things and opinion things, and collect them and then compare them and then do a great job like Talent Neuron does in terms of pulling that all together and seeing if there's correlations.
Your point is valid, but I'll just add to it. When you say tall or short, like I said, how relatively you are tall to that person or the next person. So we are doing a relative comparison. There's no absolute method in which it's a fact. You are either taller than him or shorter than him. There's nothing else. So it's a relative comparison amongst a group of people. So it's called AHP modeling, which NASA uses. So it's basically a relative comparison which helps you gauge a capability of an individual so that you can fit him to the best possible way in the next project. So it's, even an opinion is a data which is captured.
Now the HR person is going to step in here.
That's right.
I will answer the question I was asked. I think everyone is right when we think about it. It depends on your culture of your organization and what works for your organization.
Absolutely.
So I think that's kind of the first thing. I think also data is so powerful. I mean, I work for a data company, but data is an input, and I like to think of it as an input, not the input for making good decisions. Mm-hmm. So I guess I look at it that way. And I also, and the reason why I asked the question back to the group is, I also, in my role in HR, I have customers, and I see my customers as candidates, employees, and alumni. And so I think about the experience that those folks are having anytime we make a decision in terms of how we assess talent, how we measure our performance. So that's just another way that I tend to look at things as well. So I go back to, you know, what's going to work in the culture of your organization. And I also look at data being an important input, but as one input. And there's many other inputs to helping us all get the right outcome.
See, this is why I love HR leaders. They always bring it back to make sense. So, because we always think engineers always think numbers and all that, and you know, you go back and bring it, okay, think in the right way. So,
just want to add one point if we have time on the topic. I think one important way to add credibility is not just focus too much just on internal data, but also bring the external data, which has been our focus. For example, let's say you are hiring a digital marketing team. You could actually use wealth of external data to say, what are the skill components that are making up the current day digital marketing team? And say, hey, you know, we have 3 out of the 10 dominant skills, so we know these people could potentially become digital marketing strategists, for example. So when you bring in wealth of external knowledge and balance that with internal knowledge, you slowly get to that credibility level where you want to become. And also one point I would like to add is, somehow we are all like, you know, in the Facebook and the Google search world, that everything's about keyword. Like keyword, I type this, this should come. Perhaps we should start thinking more about context as to what am I really looking for here. I'm probably building, and often even in talent acquisition, the trend is more towards assembling a team as opposed to assembling an individual. So if you start looking at assembling a team, perhaps some credibility can be gained. It's a very iterative process. You have to do it step by step. But those are some of the things that we have seen other clients do well. So
we're running out of time, but I would like to cover this topic. I believe it's pretty relevant and important. How are people making build versus buy decisions today? So and also local versus global. So can you maybe go through, and maybe I'll start with Vijay and then maybe go down.
Sure. I think one of the key steps in the 5-step framework for workforce planning, when you encounter the gap, you do supply analysis, you do demand analysis. When you look at the gap, one of the things that you are supposed to go through is build versus buy. The founding fathers of workforce planning have such wisdom that you have to go through that step. But you could see many HR organizations, they almost bypass that and go to hire, right?
Not me.
Not you. You are exception. You are exception. That's why we have you here. But that's a very important thing where we feel that HR has gained that seat. They should actually be aware of that outsourcing decisions. They are already involved in globalization from the captive standpoint. They should be more involved in outsourcing aspect as well. So it becomes easier to win the credibility, implement the change, push through the mandate, whatever that is, in a lot more empowered manner. So,
Karen, how do you, until now when I did the outsourcing for Intuit, I never involved HR there. We just went to a company, hired, but right now it's pretty critical that, and how, so what are you doing to make sure that HR is on the seat, or maybe there's other ways to handle that?
Yeah, what's interesting about workforce planning is I think we're at a point where we're looking at workforce being much broader than just a full-time person, a part-time person, somebody who's badged. We're looking at contractors and consultants and outsourcers and partners, and there's a much broader way to look at the workforce today and tomorrow. I think also in the context of where we are in this global economy and where we are from a diversity and inclusion perspective, I think we have a huge opportunity to ensure that we don't have biases as we also think about our workforce. So as we think about how are we making sure that we always have diverse slates of candidates? How are we always making sure that we're looking globally for talent? Because it's not just here in the Silicon Valley where there's great talent everywhere. And I think we have to be really sensitive to that and make sure that we just keep our eyes open to that all the time.
You have a question?
Terry, my name is Ching Valdezga. I led resource management for one of HP's outsourcing business units. And you talked about transformation. One of your colleagues, former colleagues from Intuit, talked about the great work that you did while you were there. How do you help leaders change and grow their mindset so that they can then in turn help their employees reach their full potential? How do you help them make that switch?
And the switch from what to what, just to make sure I'm clear?
The switch from, for example, being purely focused on only the metrics to considering the person that they're dealing with and how do you tap into that person's full potential. So for example, having regular check-in conversations versus just looking at the raw numbers of what that employee has maybe achieved.
Yeah, there's many ways to answer that, so thanks for asking. I always like to look at goals in terms of what and how. So what meaning the results, which are more quantitative, and then the how, which has to do with leadership attributes or how to develop yourself as an individual so that you can be the best that you can be. And I think it's the combination of the two, and it's setting an expectation. So instead of having the annual goals with the process, and we're actually just moving away from that ourselves, as are many tech companies, it's a matter of saying, how do you have those discussions on an ongoing basis those check-ins on an ongoing basis where you not only look at the results, which are absolutely critical. I mean, we are a business, we're a public company, we have a responsibility to the street, to our investors, et cetera. But at the same time, we need to look at the how in terms of goals and development. And that's something that we just are trying to really make sure that all of our managers are keeping top of mind on a quarterly and monthly basis. So that's one example to answer your question.
Are there any other questions? No? So,
one more.
oh, there is. Yeah.
Thank you. I apologize if you maybe already covered this because I walked in a little late. I'd love to get your thoughts on where you are, where each of you are and your companies are on performance management, because there are topics that they're dead, then there are topics how to revamp them. Would love to get your ideas or thoughts.
And if you can connect that, how using that to workforce planning, because that's the topic. So.
Okay. I already spoke a little bit about it from a performance management standpoint. And what Terry just said, we have a 24/7 performance management system. It's open all the time, which means a manager can speak to his person and is speaking to his person all the time. Not only that, we have a 360-degree appraisal where every employee can appraise his manager as well. So it's a very transparent system, performance management system that we have. And it's based on relative grading. So there's no absolute number. We don't group people in badges and say you belong to badge A, you 500 people belong to badge B. We actually rank everyone from 1 to 5,800 people based on their value proposition in the company. It's done in a very scientific manner. And for us, a value proposition is what is your capability and how much money you are making for it. Because if you are a rock star, let's say in a company, but you are being paid an exorbitant amount of salary, then your value proposition is not very high. Your value proposition is low. It's a very different concept that we have in place. How we use it for workflows planning. Basically, once you know who you have in your company, there are two aspects of it. How do you decide, especially being in India, the attrition, that means how people are going to leave you, and what are your growth opportunities. So if you again have, so for instance, for all our 5,800 people, we have a parameter called as attrition probability, which is fairly accurate. We know who's the most likely to leave to the least likely to leave. And then growth is based on a number of different parameters in terms of your customer planning, how your customers are doing. So if you combine the two, you get something what is called as resource management. And using that, you are able to optimize your recruitment, how you train, whom you want to hire, and how you want to use internally in the most efficient way. The key word is efficiency.
Anything to add?
It's a huge loaded question. So
actually it is.
Basically, the pendulum swings.
Right, you have 30 seconds.
Right now, we are in the phase where performance management systems are bad. We are just going through that. But I'm sure another 2 years, everybody would resort back to the 9 box or whatever box that we are born to be evaluated with. I think in the interest of time, I would say like every company is relooking at it, and they want to do something different. That's our understanding. So.
The only thing I would add real quickly is it starts with understanding the business strategy, being very transparent with all your employees about where the business is going, and then making sure that it's about the discussions. I think the performance management heavy lift of goal setting, check-in, mid-year, end of year is antiquated because it doesn't operate in the same way that business today operates. So I think it's about the discussion. I think it's about transparency. I think it's about helping people understand what's important, how they're doing, and how to get better all the time. And I think it's also about leaders making sure that they understand who their top talent is to make sure that they're working on really great stuff and keeping them motivated, and that leaders also understand who might be struggling in their roles and having a plan to figure out how they can help them be better and be successful.
So I really want to thank all of you and the panelists, Amit, Clara, and Vijay. Awesome discussion. We ran out of time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And